first.
Wait, yeah, there you go.
Welcome to the May 21st, 2026 Public Works Committee meeting. Today I have Councilmember Eileen Swarthout. Councilmember Van Holst will not be with us today, so Councilmember Whedon is present. So we are all here. Are there any changes to the agenda? I believe not. So since no changes, can I have a motion to approve the minutes from the April 23rd, 2026 committee meeting?
So moved.
All
Second.
in, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
The minutes are approved. So let's go on to the first item on our agenda, which is discussing resolution number R2026-009, our 6-year transportation improvement program, and that is from the Transportation and Engineering Department. Take it away, please.
All right. Good morning, council and attendees. So my name is Jeff Cook. I'm the Deputy Director for Transportation Engineering, affectionately known as TED. And I'm here to discuss, review and discussion for passing on to council for consideration, Resolution 2026-009. And what this is this is a 6-year transportation improvement plan. And so I'll probably be using the acronym TIP, but that's what it stands for. And the reason we're here, the why, sorry, I got to get to there we go. RCW requires every town, municipality, agency to adopt every year by June 30th a 6-year TIP, a transportation improvement plan, talking about the projects that they would like to deliver over that 6 years. The projects usually are, this is the local effort, and then this gets taken, and some of the projects will get uploaded into a statewide transportation improvement plan, which will then be called a STIP. And the ones that get loaded up there are those that are deemed, and I put in quotes to talk about it, regionally significant, because that question comes up a lot. But really, this is a planning document, and it provides the ability that anytime grant funding becomes available, the first thing is it on your TIP? And if it's not, we can always amend it. But so this is, I don't want to say it's aspirational in a bad way, but this is what we would, if funding could come through, and we don't know what grants are going to be like in 6 years. If you think back 6 years, how much things have changed. But that's what this TIP, it's a foundational document for planning. The projects are out of our comprehensive plan, so it aligns with those. And they're based on the funding we have now, and some of them are ongoing, and what we could reasonably project could be funding coming up. Any questions on that piece? Because I don't want to get too much into jargon and lose people of what we're doing.
No questions, Jeff.
Sorry, can we go back? So here is a map, and it's in your appendix, but it's just a map. It's a good graphic of projects are distributed throughout the city. Some of these are programs, some of these are projects, and I'll talk a little bit more about the categorization of them, because some are for capacity, some are for multimodal, some are preservation enhancement, some serve multiple categories as far as that goes. But and then I'll also talk about what's the same and what's changed from previous years. So capacity projects are those which help add capacity. The graphic you see there on your right is actually a rendering of the plan for northbound I-5 off-ramp and on-ramp at Tumwater Boulevard. And so that's the fifth one down. Nope, sorry. Yeah, Tumwater Boulevard interchange northbound on-ramps. And this project is one that's ongoing in design, for example. All of these projects here would be adding capacity over the next 6 years. The bolded 93rd Avenue and Case Roundabout, if you see something bold, it's because it's new from previous years. So like I say, this is a 6-year plan, but we do this every year. So we've added one project in capacity, and that's at 93rd and Case. The next category about preservation, enhancement, and maintenance. We're adding one project and one program. Somerset Hill, for example, I'd say it's ongoing because the design is ongoing. The Missing Link Transportation Improvement Program is a new line item we've put on, and really that's for opportunities to infill gaps. And that's like gapping fill, and we can bring Bigfoot out if he follows this plan. But so it's more of a programmatic of when we can identify gaps and get funding for that, then we can fill in sidewalks or streets or those sorts of things on there. And a couple of these that are asterisked also work towards capacity, but how we classify them on this case is simply for preservation, enhancement, and maintenance. And then a list of multimodal projects. Some are also for capacity, like X Street and Dennis Street. Some are programmatic, like our Safe Routes to Schools and our multimodal program improvements. Some are currently ongoing. Deschutes Valley Trail, segment C is we're
Jeff,
getting ready
I
to
have a question. I have a
Yeah,
question.
go ahead.
Jeff. So when you say capacity, what is that? Is that to, increase usage? So what exactly is capacity?
Throughput, yeah, increased amount of cars that could, or not, I don't want to say just cars, increased throughput of vehicles, but then which you will, if you dig into the details and not too much, but on the spreadsheet, is even if it's a capacity project, if pretty much every project, I think every project also has pedestrian sidewalks and bike lanes. So we're not just building roads, but as it's adding capacity, here, there are not crosswalks across Tumwater Boulevard and the ramp. There will be when this project is constructed. So no project is purely just to get throughput, but that's just how it gets. It's almost a funding categorization and how we would go for a grant with it. But while doing, because I think it's important. I mean, multimodal is important in all the planning that we do and programming. So I just want to emphasize that it doesn't exclude. In fact, everything includes bike lanes, sidewalks, multimodal, intercity transit coordination, all of those things.
All right. Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah. And then there's a picture over there. That's just the overall plan for Deschutes Valley Trail, broken up into segments. Currently, Trail Segment C, we're finishing up the permitting for, and to get ready to go to get obligated for construction this year. And then there's actually a call for projects from the Thurston Region Planning Council. It's open now, and we're going to put in for the next segment to get funded, and we're just deciding which segment to go through next. But these are the projects that are classified as multimodal. From last year, if you go back and look at last year's tip, 2 projects have been removed, which is Second Avenue Ped and Bike, which is ongoing right now, and it will be completed and predominantly complete by the time this cycles through with the federal fiscal year, as will Percival Creek Fish Passage. The construction hasn't started yet, but by the time this becomes effective in all of the larger range plans, it will be, so we didn't keep it on. So we just moved those off because they'll be completed. And then, as I said, they were highlighted. A roundabout is the new one, the Missing Link program, and then an extension from Tumwater Boulevard down to Prine, which really is a service to the Costco development that's going to go into there. So the recommended action and how this works is, again, we have the jurisdiction needs to adopt it by June 30th. So we want to place resolution number R2026-009, the 6-year transportation improvement program, on the June 2nd, 2026 city council meeting for public hearing and consideration with a recommendation to adopt.
Okay. Jeff, that was straight and to the point. Are there any questions?
I just would like to make sure that every time we bring up the E Street connection, that we just make sure that it's just on the tip, no movement. We're just
Actually, I am very glad you brought that up. Thank you. I had it on a post-it note over here, but then I covered it with another post-it note because if you look at even if you look at the staff report, like E Street connection is just because it's marked number 1, it doesn't mean it's our number 1 priority. It's really more, hey, it's up there. Let's talk about it. And again, if federal funding all of a sudden opened up and we could get $8 to $50 million for that, we don't deal in likelihood, but we want it available. And I know that came up even last year during the public hearing of no, there's no work on it. I would know because that's under my purview even to start the pursuit of funding. But it's a planning document going ahead, but there's no work being done on that. And we don't have any money to do so. But that's something I'll bring up too.
Right.
Just to be clear to the public.
Right. I agree with that, Jeff. Just a slide on that, will kind of clear things up as far as transparency and trust goes. But thank you, Councilmember Swarthout, for bringing that up. Any other questions or comments?
Well, and I appreciate seeing some of the new ones that are on there, the Taiyi extension and then the proposed roundabout at 93rd. So that'll be interesting. So yeah.
Right. And I like that slide also. Okay. No other questions or
Oops.
comments? We have a recommended action to place resolution number R2026-009, 6-year transportation improvement program on the June 2nd, 2026 City Council meeting for a public hearing and consideration with a recommendation to adopt.
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
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 I heard 3 ayes, and the motion passes. Next, we will discuss the 2026 drought briefing from Water Resources and Sustainability Department. Take it away, Water Resources.
Hello. Good morning, everybody. So I'm Carrie Gillum.
Good
I
morning,
don't
Carrie.
speak to you very often. I know some of you, but not most of you probably.
I was just
I'm-
saying that. I was saying, okay, Carrie.
So I'm the Senior Water Resources Specialist over in WERS. Been here for about 5 years, so I've got a little bit under my belt. And I'm here to talk to you about the summer drought assessment. And this is something that we perform every year. It's what I get to do every year in the spring. And this just kind of is something that we incorporate a lot of data from a lot of different sources, both locally and nationwide climate data and weather forecasts. So you can see from what I put on this slide here, it includes local data in the sense of what we get for groundwater monitoring data. But also I look at like state climatology and what ecology has to offer. They often make, certain assessments as well, especially when it comes to drought declarations. And then nationwide climate and weather prediction centers. So a variety of different from the kind of local to the larger regional scale. So one of the data points is precipitation and temperature. And we look all the way back what we consider a water year, which starts in October 1st of every year and then ends on September 30th of the following year. So our water year began October 1st of this last fall, and the region has had kind of a wetter and warmer winter and spring. So we've been in a La Nina. And what this usually gives us then is we've had a lot of precipitation, but not a lot of snow. And because we've had a lot of precipitation and therefore not a lot of snow being captured at the top, we've had a lot of flooding seen in Western Washington. You probably have seen the headlines throughout it. We actually have had rainfall that's above our average by 5 inches in Tumwater alone, which we'd think would be great, except it all runs off. So unfortunately, because of the warmer temperatures, we've had less snowpack, which can, not necessarily us here. We're not as snowpack dependent in our basins, but of course it impacts other areas. And you can see, I pulled this from the National Water and Climate Center, that the two basins that we are in, a part of, which is the Puget Sound Basin and the Coastal Basin, we are down by 62 and 52% as of March of the normal for snowpack. So drastically less than normal.
Carrie, did you say
Yes.
we are down 52%?
Of normal.
Mm,
Yes.
okay.
So a lot less. And like I said, luckily for us, we're not as dependent here in our area, the Olympia, Tumwater, Lacey area. But, unfortunately for places like that depend on those reservoirs that are high, that want that slow meltwater, they may be more impacted. So anyways, moving on to the next. So Department of Ecology, like I said, can put in drought declarations, and they reassessed, and again on April of this year declared another drought declaration for the 4th time in a row. And this has not happened since 1989. So we're kind of setting a new trend, unfortunately. And this is a statewide one. Sometimes they'll do partial parts of the state. Well, there'll be an advisory on some parts of the state, and there'll be a declaration in other parts of the state. And it usually affects more the eastern side of the state. This time it's statewide. Last year we had a partial where we were in an advisory on the western side of the state, and it was more on the eastern side of the state. And then I think the year before that it was statewide was the declaration. So we're seeing more and more of this occurring where we're having these statewide declarations and impacts. And it's mostly because of the snowpack. We have a snowpack deficit and they're seeing moisture in the soil being a lot less, as well as the temperature increase. By doing this declaration, it does allow for ecology to have more drought responses, which includes more funding and interagency agreements during this time. So this is something that, I can use as a data point, as well as the other information about that was on the previous slide with data and with precipitation and temperature. So looking more at the local level, we have our own monitoring network. There's probably about 12 monitoring, shallow groundwater monitoring wells that we have, as well as Thurston County has their own monitoring network as well. Their data is available online for me to look at, and then we go out and collect our own through our own system. I have on here 5 that are just ones that I wanted to focus on. And you can see that they're kind of spread throughout. So we've got some along the south as well as some along the north within our city. And I was going to show some trends. These being the shallow aquifers, we have 2 main aquifers that are within our basin. And they are separated by a till layer, which water doesn't move very easily through. Most of our production comes out of the lower one, which some of the shallow aquifer water will sometimes go through that till layer in order to refill the lower aquifer. So we do want to keep an eye on these shallow aquifer conditions to kind of see what could happen in the future. It isn't something that we see that immediately recharges into the deep aquifers, but over time. So the shallow aquifers are more impacted by the most recent precipitation and water event, like kind of temperature events. And we kind of have seen this through the shallow aquifers, is that if you see over time, there has been this kind of drawdown effect. The water level's been going down, going down, going down. But in this last year, just in the spring, we've seen them kind of rebound a little bit. And again, it's because we've had a lot of precipitation. So it's here, but it doesn't necessarily stay for very long. And unfortunately, for some of our wells, we do have some data gaps, but I was trying to then again just show spatially over the entire basin that we're in for the city, that, we can kind of see some of these trends where it's dropping down.
Carrie,
Mm-hmm.
question, what would be more helpful for me would be to see a picture of the higher aquifer, shallow one compared to the deeper one,
Okay.
as far as for public knowledge so that we can see.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I
That
don't
would
feel
be
like I
more
could give a
helpful.
whole presentation about explaining the hydrogeology of our area, but
Yeah.
I can see that would be
That would
very
be
useful
helpful.
for this.
Right, because I would like this, it says that it's for informational only and we can't put everything on council considerations. But just you discussing this would be great if we can get it out to the public. If Jason would help us, just let the community know, hey, when we say climate change is here and it exists, this would be very helpful.
Right. Right. And this is something that I definitely would like. And I have over, my tenure here tried to educate people on.
Yes.
Especially because people, see the Pacific Northwest as being a very water-rich area with all of our rivers and stuff. But all of our water comes from groundwater. That's what we depend on the most.
Right.
So yeah, there's been, decreases over time, and then increases. It's like I said, the shallow aquifer itself is pretty, responsive to present day precipitation. But we don't depend on that. We depend on the lower aquifer. So I also take a look at kind of our production wells. So I chose our three largest wells, which are mostly located in the southern boundaries of our area, or sorry, I'm blanking on the word, but within the southern Tumwater. So we have well 12 and 14, which is near Bush Middle School, and then well 15, which is just south of City Hall. And this is something that I just started recently looking at in the last few years. Since these wells pump all year round, it's kind of hard to see exactly, is it pumping or is it the region in general that's being affected by this? And so we're looking at depth to water here, unlike before we were looking at elevation, so where it was from being sea level. But you can see these are in the deeper aquifer. So this is where, we're able to kind of get an idea of what's going on. So we do see, trends in the past where it's getting deeper, the water's getting deeper and deeper, and then it's been slowly coming up. And again, I think it's because the amount of time it takes for the water from the upper aquifer to move to the lower aquifer, it takes some time. It takes years sometimes for that to happen. We've also had to change some of our operations sometimes because as we start seeing these changes occur, we don't want to pump it so low that it pumps air in. So right now we are currently pumping at 600 gallons a minute on 15, which is our second largest well. Our third largest well, which is well 12, part of our Bush well field, is at 550 right now, and it has varied over time as well. And then our largest producer, which is on the Bush well field, is 2100, and we've also pumped up to 2200 on it. So this is kind of a snapshot of what I can get from data. Again, the best data is when it's not pumping to be able to see water levels, but it gives me something to work with to kind of have an idea of what our lower aquifer does. Currently, we don't have any monitoring wells in the lower aquifer. However, we're planning on renovating that here in the future, is getting some wells so that we can do water level and water quality data out of our deep aquifer, which is where we get our water from. Another data point I've been looking at is comparing production and consumptions of spring versus then that summer. So spring consumption I've been using as a kind of forecast for summer potential demand. And it kind of reflects our growth. And you can see the bars here, the blue bars is actually our March water consumption. And I've chosen March because that coincides with the water levels that I'm pulling for all the other observational data, as well as it's just before irrigation season. And also it's after, I've noticed that we always seem to have a very big high in demand around the holidays. I don't know why, but there seems to be a lot of water use around the holidays. So it's kind of between that point of when we start having these demands. And you can see we've had a steady rise over time, which reflects the amount of, we're slowly growing. So I can kind of see that. And you can see this is in tens of millions of gallons. Over on this side, which is our line, is hundreds of millions of gallons. And that's what our total production and consumption, well, basically production versus as also our consumption for the summer. And you can see that trend, it's also been rising, but it's actually been rising at a steeper rate, which seems to be coinciding a lot with the amount of hotter and longer summers that we're having. And I've highlighted a few of the things that we have observed in the past few years. We had that heat dome that hit us in 2021, which we were getting like 110, I think, at some point. Then 2022, we had multiple stretches above normal highs. And then the same thing, we were having record-breaking highs in 23, 24, another above normal stretches. It's okay. Usually we can recover fairly well if it's just one day we have a really high temperature, and then we usually come back down. But when it's multiple days, it does put stress on the system. And so I've been using this to kind of look at, okay, this is what we have for 26. It's looking about the same as 25. So maybe we'll have about the same demand on our summer production needs or consumption needs. because there's, of course, no point yet for 26 created. So it kind of gives me like, okay, what can we plan for and what can I communicate then with the community and with our staff and with management? So what happens when we get all this data? We have a water shortage response plan that helps us to determine, okay, where do we look, first of all, to find out if there's going to be a problem, and what triggers and what steps do we take if there is a shortage of water? And so our water shortage has a response plan has 4 stages, and it's a phased response. So we gradually, make the stage change depending on the need. And there's triggers that are built into it, which I'll talk a little bit more about those triggers in the next few slides. But they could be based on environmental, such as temperature, like if we are foreseeing that there's going to be a heat wave that's occurring, infrastructure, if we have a well goes down, or if there is, a pump or something within the system that breaks, or some type of emergency. We had a chlorine shortage a few years back, which can therefore affect how much water we can deliver. And so we ended up calling upon, or figuring out, are we going to have to pull this shortage response plan together and start, having triggers for that. So stage 1 is voluntary, which we enter into every year, and it's just kind of educational. We want people to, be aware of how to use water. We have some, some incentives or little freebies that we can give to help them make those choices and to use water more wisely. We have a minor shortage, which has more voluntary reductions. But then we also, as a city, start to cut back on our non-essential usage, which are like landscaping and irrigation of our waterway, our right-of-ways, maybe some of our facilities and things like that.
Carrie,
We
I have a
Yes.
question for you.
Yes.
So what about businesses? For example, we have a water shortage and we have a business that makes sodas or so what happens with that?
They come on in the later stages.
Okay.
So yeah, so then in the later stage, we have stage 3, which is our moderate, and there's more restrictions that come in. So actually, non-essential water is just prohibited. So you can't water your lawn, you can't water the right of ways and such. And then we start having restrictions on what was called social and economic uses. And so those social and economic uses include commercial applications such as car washes, laundromats, restaurants, agricultural irrigation, schools, churches, motels. So those kinds of things. And then the city will discontinue like its non-essential use, the landscape watering. But we also don't do like main flushing unless it's for an emergency purpose that we have to do main flushing. So that's where that stage comes in. There's just more and more restriction. Stage 4 is, of course, the worst, where it's not only the non-essential, but also the essential, which are kind of what's needed for life-sustaining hygiene and also firefighting. One of the examples that the city could do is to bring the system pressure down to the lowest possible it can. So there's just less water moving and volume moving through the system. And then we could require the public to reduce water by a percentage. So all these stages, of course, it's like me looking at this information and getting the data, talking to my managers reaching out to council and other managers that are higher up in order to determine what steps are taken and how that's going to be communicated. So that was a lot on that slide, but I think this is the heaviest of them. Are there any questions? Okay. So triggers are based on what is called the present possible production, or P3. And it is determined on how much our wells can make in a 22-hour day. And we do it on 22 hours with giving the wells the opportunity to rest for a couple of hours because you don't want to overtax your pumps. And so I have just a quick example. It doesn't necessarily show exactly what we are able to do today, but the addition of all these wells and then 5 figuring out how much they can produce over a 22-hour period. This is our P3. This is the maximum amount that or possible production that we can do in a day. So just remember the P3 is the present possible production because we'll be talking about it in the next slide. So here's where the triggers come in based on the different stages. So stage 1 starts June 1st, and that's every year. It's just, again, everybody's just going to be voluntarily trying to be aware and be mindful and not use a lot of water, so that we hopefully don't peak out the system. Stage 2 is got 2 different triggers it can go for. So it'd be 90% if we hit 90% of that P3 over 3 days consecutively next to each other, or 1 day at 95%. Stage 3 is 95% over 3 days, or 97% at 1 day. And then 100, and then stage 4 is 100%. So we're using all the water we had stage 4 in 1 day. Luckily, we have not, since 2016, we have not moved beyond stage 1. We have been pretty successful with being able to stay within our P3. However, in the last few years, we have had where we have had 1 day that it's exceeded the stage 2 for just 1 day. It needs to do 3 days in order for it to be officially stage 2. And then other years where we have come close, where it's just barely touching it. And so because of that, I've kind of have this dashed line here where we've had like what I would call a soft stage 2, and we have called upon the city to kind of like cut back on water usage. So here's kind of what I get to keep track of every summer. The blue bars indicate the amount of production. So that's what we're trying to keep track of for our P3. The solid lines on top are the different stages and their trigger points. I've got a dash line here. I've actually been keeping track of for the last few years the temperature. So the orangish color is the actual temperature we had that day. The kind of grayish blocky dash one, that's the annual, or I should say the average for the month temperature. So you can see where we've been above average and below average for the temperatures. Here's an example where on July 30th, we came really close to that stage 2. So, and it was all because we decided, luckily we were able to wait, but we started doing right-of-way watering on North Street. And you can see how much that changes the demand on the system. So this is something that I've been able to put into a nice, easy chart. It's something that my managers get to look at whenever they want to in order to keep themselves updated. I'm able to easily pull information from our production databases and keep this updated throughout the season. We are going to start taking out data starting this week, because we are noticing that if there's more irrigation that's going on earlier this year, probably because we are having a warmer spring. And so I want to continue to track what kind of impacts that's having on our production. So for our 2026 summer, this is where we're at for now. We are starting at stage 1, as we do every year. So we're encouraging the public again to use water wisely, and to prepare for the fact that we're going to have a hotter summer. There was a memo that was sent out by the city manager to leadership team that informed them about this. I understand there was a community messaging from the mayor. We sent out a bill insert in May, and it was all about water conservation and how you can get your own outdoor conservation incentives kits, which includes things like a hose timer and a water nozzle, things that can help you save water. And surprising, we got a very good response. We had 60 people come in for a kit in the first week, and they continued to come in. So that was very encouraging that people are reading our messaging. And we did see a decrease in 24 and 25 when we did get the messaging out in the overall demands. We are planning again to do it in July and August to put additional messaging out. And that'll be in our bill inserts. And then there's been some things that have gone out on social media on our Facebook. And then we've also updated our website content so that people again can request those different free incentives and freebies. Our water quality report has just been sent to the printers, so we are going to be having some information in there. And it also, again, highlights our, hey, you've got these things available to help you save water, and here's the website to go to request it.
Carrie, I have a question.
Yes,
So is this on your website or our city website? When you have
it's on
it's on
it's on
our,
the city website.
okay. I gotta go
It's
look.
on the city website under the WERS department.
Excellent. Thanks.
Yeah. And then at some point, I think this summer, I don't know the exact launch time is, it's kind of in planning, is that they want to do direct outreach working with HOAs. And that will be kind of headed by our water conservation specialist that we have just hired in October, as well as working with our new field staff that we hired in January. And then there's still more planning that's going on, of course, in this phase. Now that we've got the staff to take on this, there's additional things that they're talking about doing. So with that, are there any questions?
Any questions from my fellow council members?
I don't have any questions, but I just like to thank you for presenting this. It's all valuable information, and the more we know, the more we can get it out to everybody. And it's nice to be able to actually have the graphs and the trends and be able to demonstrate exactly what we're looking at. So thank you, appreciate it.
I was concerned about the HOA part of it because I live in a condo, and we have automated sprinklers, and then half of them work and half of them don't. And I know we've had problems with underground leakage and stuff like that. So I don't want to waste water. So I need to get with our HOA group before we turn on because I know they've been around trying to test the sprinklers and stuff. And so, but I know that they had a big problem last year, and I just hate watering sidewalks and watching water go down the drain. And so I just, having more alternatives to changing lawns into other landscaping options would be a nice chat to have with HOAs as well instead of doing grass. So,
and that's, I think, what they're really focusing on for the outreach. Part of it is we know that there's certain bylaws that HOAs have that we kind of wonder, it's like how flexible can those be in order to try to attain both goals? We understand there's aesthetics, but also, how can we work in this whole water conservation effort? Again, a lot of people don't necessarily understand that we're in the Pacific Northwest, and we're not the desert Southwest, but there's still there's still water to be considered for, it could be a shortage. And so I'm hoping in the near future here, I know that, we have programs that we have been doing here in WERS that are, like natural yard care, things like that. We're trying to incorporate those together with conservation so that we can all work together to get this messaging out. And again, working with HOAs, that's probably where a lot of it is needing to be worked on. We also are going to be working with commercial irrigation accounts. Alex Kate, who's our water conservation specialist, she's getting certified to be able to do those audits. So we can bring that program back around and be able to look at those things, make sure they're watering correctly, but also then looking at their system and seeing if there are any upgrades that can be made that can make them more efficient. And more than anything, I think getting the word out is checking your system for leaks. Checking your system for leaks can be the biggest thing, and usually
Yeah.
you don't see them.
Mhm.
And watering the concrete. Don't water the
Mhm.
concrete.
Yeah.
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 Um,
I know over in let's see, I know it's not us, but it's Olympia, but in oh God, it's across the street. My mom used to live over there, the big subdivision, or it's a big HOA. It's over there by the sushi place, across from the sushi lake, lake something. Anyway, they put up signs that say, "Shh, my lawn is, sleeping this summer," so they don't, catch shade from because they don't enforce. Their HOA doesn't go around and enforce. But I remember when Charlie Schneider was on council, and then the preserve, and I don't know how they are about leveling fines against the people. We don't do that here in our subdivision, but some of them are really, get pretty uptight about not having green lawns and stuff. And so, and it is hard to change it takes like 2/3 of the voters to change your HOA rules and things like that. So it can be a heavy lift for some people. But I remember him trying to propose like more drought tolerant at the preserve. And so,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think the thing that I've been learning about is the alternatives and how people aren't necessarily aware of that,
Mhm.
and also the view of alternative lawns.
mhm.
My neighbor across the street put in a micro clover lawn, and I'm really happy with it. But a lot of people, kind of see that as being a weed lawn, not if it's
Yeah.
not a true lawn, they don't see it. And
Mhm.
I think part of it is going to be kind of a cultural shift that's going to have to be made.
Mhm.
So there is a kind of an uphill battle, but I think it's something that, all we can do is start by
Right.
education and
Right.
outreach, discussions, and showing.
Mhm.
I would really like to be able to demonstrate to people that, hey, we can do this. So if we have HOAs that are maybe willing to use their green space as a demonstration garden.
Mhm.
I think that'd be wonderful. We need people in the community to be able to step up and say, hey, we're willing to give it a try.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I've taken photos. I love our public works guy, the grounds guy that has transformed City Hall. He's an artist. I just love his work. And so I'd love to hire him, like come do my yard, if he does the side hustle. I've taken pictures because I would like to have a slope, and I'd like to turn my front yard just because I have a postage stamp piece of grass in my little condo piece into a dry riverbed, just showing how you can use plants and rocks and different things like that. And I think posting things like that and giving people ideas, if we can use
Yes.
some ideas
Yeah.
on our
Yes.
website and stuff like that, is just going out and showing what you
We
could
should be
do.
highlighting that very much
Yeah.
so,
Right.
because I feel like I should not be asking my public to do something that we aren't willing to do themselves.
Yeah.
And if we've got examples, and I know that in parks, I've talked to a few people and they've done some excellent work.
Yeah.
By all means, we should find a way to
We should
highlight
be-
that
Yeah.
and using that and saying, hey, this is
Yes.
what we have done. You
Yeah.
can do it too.
Here
Correct.
again, we
I like
need
that.
a communications on here. So to talk
Um,
to
Right.
about getting that, highlighting those things, because
Yeah.
it's just, again, it's extraordinary, the work in the front. So it's
And
absolutely
they're
beautiful.
usually so much lower maintenance. I think that's one of the things that people don't push enough either. It's not just a matter of, hey, you don't have to use a lot of water, but a lot of things when you're using natives, they're low maintenance too.
Mhm.
Your water bill goes down, right?
Water
Right.
bill
I was
goes
going to say
down.
there's a big
You don't have to
financial cost
weed.
to it
You're
too.
not weeding all the time.
Right. You're not having to
know?
put fertilizers or weed killers on there. I
Yeah.
mean, it's just so many benefits.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
And it's not all roadies. Yay.
Right.
Well, not that I'm against roadies, but we're using, going to different kinds of planting.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So is our city administrator still listening to the conversation?
Yes, you in the dark.
Yes,
there.
I am.
Oh, yes, city administrator. So you heard what was said as far as our messaging plan and taking photos of what City Hall looks like now, what it looked like in the past, so that the public can see how we're leading on this, and maybe just a 1 or 2 pager, because people are busy. They don't want to look at this briefing or whatever it is. So just maybe a 1 pager, what you can do, what you can do now, 1, 2, 3, 4, just something simple like that. But great conversation, great briefing, and looking forward to seeing more, because I just pay the bill. So just different ways to help our public know, what's going on. And I see this, Carrie, as a warning order, right? Climate change we're having hotter and longer summers. I'm
Yes.
hearing 52%, statewide drought hasn't been done since 1989. So the public needs to know this. Climate
Yes.
change is here. So just getting this information out is what I would like more of.
I see Patrick's raised his hand.
Okay.
Good morning.
Go ahead, Patrick.
So I just wanted to voice a couple things to let you know what we do actually have in process right now regarding education and outreach for water conservation, and as well as we're tying this together with our Habitat at Home project that we're doing with Stream Team and Thurston County, and in a partnership with that. And what we're doing is, because our water conservation specialist just started off in October, we're developing our plan right now, and we're going to focus this year internally mostly, but at the same time, we're developing a process to work with that Habitat at Home to integrate both water conservation and developing habitat, more natural type plantings around in basically the residential communities, and then using the incentives that we have through our water conservation program and through the Stream Team and all of the coordinated efforts and partnerships that they have to get more natural landscapes into residential communities. As Carrie mentioned earlier, we're going to start with an HOA and work with them, see if we can do like a demonstration garden. And so all of these things are being developed right now. And we're going to be starting them, just initially this summer, because we are focusing on our internal city projects first. And then getting, because we represent a whole lot of park properties and facility properties that we can evaluate and see what we can do internally to, use water more efficiently, and then turn those, more outward facing and get the residential community on board, including all those incentives.
Excellent. Thank you, Patrick. As for me, this is for our information only, but I see warning orders, like I said, and city administrator, if you can chime in, fellow council members, committee members. I like to know stuff, right? When I'm on the city council, and more information to me is better than less. What do you feel about this going to council considerations or a work session for our fellow council members?
I don't know what it would do as far as consideration, but I would totally be into doing a work session on it. I don't think there was anything to really approve on
Right.
here, but a work session I think is very valuable.
Right.
I think consideration only if Carrie makes a presentation, because it's a public thing that
Right.
we talk to our public about, giving them a
Right.
heads up about what's preparing them for the summer.
Right.
Right? Would that be appropriate, Paul?
Yeah, I think a work session would be good. I'd want to pair it and have part of it
But we
be
don't
on
film work sessions.
but I think if we have the work session, if it's part of it's focused on, I thought we do record work sessions.
No, you
Pretty sure
don't.
we do.
I don't think we do. Do we?
Let me check on that.
Okay.
Because I was under the
Yes,
understanding that we
we
did.
do.
Oh, we
Yeah.
do?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think
Sorry.
all those. Yep. No. So if we had the the part of it be on the kind of the presentation that was shared today, but then also add a second part of that, which
Right.
was the information that Patrick just
Right.
shared, the kind of
Right.
the effort and the things that we're doing about it. I think if we had a two-parter, I think this probably makes sense at the early part of the summer, because that's when you could have the most impact in terms
Right.
of exposure. Part of that challenge will be, does that mean we slide something back? So, Patrick, if you could talk with Dan about this conversation, and then if we can, maybe we'll revisit it at the mayor manager meeting to see if we add this, or maybe even a condensed version of it if
Right.
we're tight on time with the agendas coming up. But definitely open to bringing this to a work session if that's what the committee desires.
Okay, so,
Do we
So-
also know? Sorry, Andrew, go ahead.
go ahead. No, you go ahead.
I was just curious about like our building codes and everything. Have we changed any of these for like residential to really maybe go ahead and push on non-native building type of codes to basically restrict the amount of non-native or green grasses that are allowed in building? Is that something that we could even look into, or is that not applicable here?
I do know that they are looking at the codes right now with regard to like the tree code and what is required for watering, required watering and installation of irrigation systems when it comes to new development. So I know that
Okay.
discussion is happening right now, although I am not directly tied to it.
Okay.
Okay, so it says for information only, so do I make a motion to bring it to the council work session for information to the council and the public, Karen? Or is that going to be done, behind the scenes and then it comes to the work session? So is a recommended action necessary?
You don't, I don't believe that a motion is necessary, since you're not making a recommendation of approval of any kind. But you can direct that it come to a future work session, just as you're doing right now.
Okay, so direct to come to a future work session so we can let the public know and our fellow council members know. So item 6, are there any additional and future items to discuss? Since there are none, the meeting is adjourned. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.